Today, in honor of Bunker Hill Day, I dug up and finally finished an old video from 2021. Hope you guys enjoy. Today is probably the most awaited video on my channel yet. Maybe not by a majority of you. However, some people on my channel have been waiting for this video for over a year. Shout out to the patron who made this video possible almost a year and a half ago. But we finally actually came to a solution. I was asked to make a only American, only USS ships fleet that can compete with the best of the meta fleets in PvP. That was kind of hard. US has traditionally sucked in PvP battles in Azur lane, and we have tested multiple times. In fact, multiple times I've actually had videos ready and completed and scrapped them because I wasn't able to realistically beat meta fleets consistently. That changes today with this video. I tested this fleet extensively. I would say I've tested nearly every possible combination of USS fleets. In fact, other than Dewey, I have every ship in the faction, just so I can test them for this video. This video has been a long time in the making. So this fleet is not going to be the best meta fleet possible, of course, but it is going to be one of the best options if you want to be pure and stick to solely American. So let's get into it. We obviously know New Jersey and Juno, both basically the epitome of a PvP ship, arguably both tier 0. So there right here, you could have guessed that these two ships were going to be in this fleet. Since New Jersey's come out, she's been in nearly every fleet, US or not, just because of how powerful she is, and Juno has been around for years. But the rest of the US faction is not particularly built for PvP. So what options are we going to be using? Well, let's start off in the Vanguard because that makes it a little bit easier. A ship that PvP enthusiasts have been excited about for a long time and have been using even in non-US faction fleets is Seattle. Seattle is fantastic. Obviously, she's going to go in the back slot once we get our third ship in here, but she is fantastic with being able to deal with enemy aviation damage, as well as just having enough tankiness for torpedoes and firepower because she has light armor, because she has good anti-air, and because she has damage reduction skills and a big HP pool. A newer ship, the ship that I would argue completed this fleet. This is the ship that made this fleet possible and allows this fleet to compete at the highest levels of PvP. And this ship is pretty new. I just finished her. It's Anchorage. Of course, she's going to go in the middle and Seattle's going to go at the end. So Seattle gets her damage reduction skill. Both of those stack with New Jersey's skill as well. So right now we have one of the tankiest, if not the tankiest Vanguard possible. New Jersey is going to give damage reduction buffs. Seattle's going to get damage reduction for herself. Juno is going to be Juno. And Anchorage, one of the tankiest, if not the tankiest ship in PvP with her shields and her smokescreen. Now, a lot of questions come about what the other two ships for the USS faction are going to be in the backline. These four ships are pretty standard. I think most of you could have probably guessed before you clicked on this video that these four were going to be in here. If you didn't, well, these are the four best ships in the US faction. Where the US faction really struggles trying to be mono is in these other two backliners. We only have one Iowa-class battleship, and a lot of the carriers in the US have problems with being too slow. Enterprise and Essex struggle because they launched too late. They used to be pretty decent, but these days they're going to be killed before they even have a chance to launch. So one of the things I like to do here when we're min-maxing a fleet being locked into a mono faction is figure out what the best ship is and play around its strengths. It's pretty obvious here the best ship in this fleet, and the ship that's going to carry this fleet all the way to victory is going to be New Jersey. So we're going to play around her. So playing around her actually involves buffing her, and that is Bunker Hill. Of course, the queen of 13.4. Took me 9 months to get her, but she's finally here, and she is here built to be buffing New Jersey, which of course she needs to be in the flagship to do. So she's going to be our flagship ship. This allows me to buff New Jersey. And she's an Essex class carrier. She's very powerful. Essex is a little bit more powerful. Of course, she is going to be a little bit slow. However, we're going to hope that hidden carrier mechanic plays to our favor. She also is going to help reveal any of the opponent's carriers in case New Jersey can't target them. Of course, once again, she doesn't really have cooldown reduction, so that hurts. However, she is going to be buffing New Jersey. So for this third slot, there are a lot of options. There's Essex, there's Enterprise, there's even Independence, which is actually a really good choice. Independence is a good option here because she buffs Bunker Hill, Bunker Hill also gets a buff when she's partnered with another carrier, which Independence is, and so they're kind of having a lot of synergy there. Independence also has a quick early strike, meaning that we're going to hopefully get her off right around the time that New Jersey is going to be firing as well. However, this is not helping or buffing the ship that we are centering around, which is New Jersey. Independence does very little or anything to help New Jersey. Independence isn't even tanky. Independence will probably get revealed by the enemy Acula and then get melted by the first strike salvo by any decent opponent's battleship. So in fact, I don't actually like a carrier slot here at all. A carrier is just not going to be what we need. Other than Independence, there aren't really any fast carriers. Independence doesn't really do the trick. I don't want to run Birmingham in the Vanguard anyway, and she really isn't tanky. In fact, one of the issues here is we don't want New Jersey to get sniped. So if we can put somebody else here tanky, that would be nice. Specifically a battleship who will have higher HP, as well as typically heavier armor. Now, this is kind of where we struggle because a lot of people think about which battleship other than New Jersey that you can run in the US faction. And there aren't a lot of great options. Georgia is a PR ship that many people use, and I can tell you I've tested her extensively. She was the first PR2 ship that I completed, and she is an utter disappointment. Absolutely garbage in PvP. She cannot stay alive. She misses all the time. And there's a 30% chance that she misses the barrage and you just lose that battle and have to reset. Absolute trash ship in PvP. Yeah, she serves her purpose in potentially being an option for boss fleeting, specifically in Operation Siren, but not here. I've tested her so many times and she's just not very good. Of course, the old US meta ran Washington and South Dakota as a pair. Washington's skill requires South Dakota, and we're not running both of them, so we can just throw Washington out of the window. However, South Dakota could be a good option here. She's tanky. She can take shots away from New Jersey, take that damage, and of course, New Jersey's going to be buffing her, and so is Bunker Hill, so she's going to get double buffed here and a chance to double damage on her firing. South Dakota is definitely a decent choice here. You can go with that, but I found a better option, and that is her sister, Massachusetts. I know a lot of you might be saying, what the heck, this ship was garbage. And when Massachusetts first came out, she was. However, last December, she was buffed. And that buff was actually pretty significant in making her available to be used in PvP. They buffed her own self-buffing, and they got rid of her really bad skill, allowing you to turn off the bad skill. I've always said that if she could turn that skill off, she would be much better shape. On top of that, there's one big other solution that was recently made that made Massachusetts pretty decent. Massachusetts needs to have 3 battleships or heavy cruisers. She obviously counts herself. New Jersey is an easy choice. However, a 3rd battleship was not really ideal, and what we wanted is a heavy cruiser. Before this, we had to choose between Baltimore and Bremerton. Baltimore is really awkward because we usually run her with 1 carrier. Baltimore's skill says when she has a carrier, she buffs that carrier, but when there are no carriers, she buffs herself. We want her to buff herself, but we don't want to run no carriers. It just made it really funky. Baltimore also didn't have enough tankiness to do what we wanted, and it really just was kind of not a perfect fit. So more often than not, we had to go with Bremerton. Because, of course, Juneau and Seattle were in the other 2 slots, and neither of them were heavy cruisers. That was changed with Anchorage. Anchorage being the best heavy cruiser for PvP, basically, and proccing Massachusetts skill. This is our set of 6 that will take us to the promised land. Manifest destiny, here we come. So let's take a look at these gears, because I know some of you might be wondering, how does this fleet work? What are you using? And, of course, they're all level 125. Bunker Hill and New Jersey are oathed. So is Anchorage, and they're at 200 affinity as well. Bunker Hill runs pretty much the standard carrier loadout here. We're running the aviation fuel as well as the homing beacon, which is pretty standard for carriers in PvP, trying to get their planes out quickly and across the screen for that crash damage. We don't have our UR Rainbow dive bomber yet. I don't know of many people who do, but we are running the best option outside of that at plus 13. We have a Wyvern, and then we're going to run the German rocket ship for the fighter. This is pretty standard. We are focusing primarily on this skill. This skill increases the aviation of this ship. It also increases the firepower of the other two battleships, Massachusetts and New Jersey. And another thing to note, if she's alone, with this skill, she's able to buff the whole main fleet's anti-air by 12%. No other carriers, and that's fantastic. This makes our backline very tanky and no longer very susceptible to pre-launch like Perseus and Aquila, because New Jersey and Massachusetts, man, they have high AAs. And when we're buffing them all by 12%, on top of like literally putting Juneau and Seattle in the front, planes aren't going to hurt us anymore. So Bunker Hill is actually a pretty decent ship here. Moving on, we have New Jersey. She is the queen of this fleet. She is going to take us to our promised land. Of course, the most important part of this skills that she has is the damage reduction reduced by 5 for all Eagle Union ships, and increase the firepower of your Eagle Union battleship, which is including herself and Massachusetts. We're playing her with pretty much the same loadout as we did on the Mafia fleet, because that's the best loadout for her. We are playing the white shell so she can hit hard. This fleet is mostly tanky, and hoping that New Jersey is going to bring that punch. And obviously fire control radar high performance is necessary to get her to fire quickly. And we got the AP ammo from the 457. You can go watch that video if you want more information of why I chose this loadout for New Jersey. Massachusetts is probably the one that you're questioning. We're actually going to build Massachusetts very similarly to how we build New Jersey. I, of course, don't have 2 plus 13 457s, just 1 plus 13 and 1 plus 10. It's more important to buff up the New Jersey than it is the Massachusetts. Why we're running the Tashkent gun in the auxiliary slot here is actually very similar to New Jersey, but it has the added benefit of turning this skill off. We don't have to deal with SHS ammo anymore, which is garbage. We can just use the standard AP plus ammo from the 457. The skill that makes this ship really good is this skill though. 24% is the ability that we can buff her firepower, her anti-air, and her evasion. Of course, firepower buffing is great, but she doesn't have a barrage, so that pretty much just makes up for the barrage damage we're missing. The anti-air is fantastic, especially when we can stack that buff with the damage reduction from New Jersey, as well as the anti-air buff from Bunker Hill. However, the most important part of this skill is the 24% evasion buff. Since when have you had a battleship that can buff its own evasion by 24%? That's crazy amounts. Of course, she has less than average evasion. The skill normally would bring her evasion up to the level of New Jersey, which is actually pretty good. However, it does buff the actual equipment that we put in here. So of course, it would be a complete waste not to put a plus 13 steering gear on her and have that be buffed by 24%. I've tried putting the other evasion equips here instead of the high performance fire control radar. It just isn't worth it. The 15% reduction in cooldown is so important for a battleship. The hit stat is also pretty important when you're running AP especially. And so this is my favorite loadout for her. She is actually going to be tanking a lot of shots. She might not look as tanky as New Jersey. However, more times than not, I've found in all of my testing, she survives longer than New Jersey because of that big mommy skill. She's basically going to take damage away from New Jersey, which is super important. And that anti-air is massive, a base of over 400 before being buffed by 24% and then buffed another 12% by Bunker Hill. Absolute tank of a ship. She's actually a lot better than most people give her credit for. We're going to cruise through the front line here because most of you kind of know the reasoning before this. Seattle obviously going to have the best damage in the first gun slot, the higher stat booster in the second gun slot. She is going to be one of our anti-air queens, so we're giving her the highest DPS anti-air gun, and then we're going to be going with speed and evasion for the 2 auxiliaries there. Pretty standard. Putting her in the back so she gets her damage reduction, of course. Anchorage is probably one of the newer ones. We are running double evasion equips on her. She needs that evasion. That's very important. Running mostly standard across the board for everything else. For the main gun, we're running a pretty standard HE heavy cruiser gun. For the torpedoes, we're running the quick launchers. This is the second fastest launch time of any of the torpedoes, allowing us to get more smoke screens and shields throughout the battle. However, it does significantly more damage than the fastest one and doesn't actually have that much more time. I think it's like a second, not even. In terms of the anti-air, she's got actually low anti-air for this fleet. So we're going to give her the fast reload gun so that she can help proc more firing of the anti-air circle. Kind of weird to think that Anchorage has a bad anti-air in the fleet here, but I guess that is the US faction. Anti-air queens. And of course, we do need to have the Beaver squad so that she can actually move around. She's probably going to be the last ship surviving 9 times out of 10. So it doesn't even matter too much that she's having the Beaver Squad instead of it being on a backline ship, because she's going to keep it for the most part all the way to the end. Juno actually has a big change here, because notoriously I've said don't ever put Pearl Tears on a Juno, because you don't want to stack a Martyr skill with the Pearl Tears, because that creates problems with overhealing. We usually want to hedge the heal from the Pearl Tears and the heal from Juno on different ships, instead of having 35% right off the bat. Of course, it's also more scary the fact that we're running a Manju on Juno. Manju, the most powerful item in the US faction, meaning that Juno could, in theory, outlive some people before she heals 35%. Those are really bad battles. However, it's not really worth putting a Pearl Tears on either of the other 2 Vanguard ships. And of course, definitely not on any main fleet ship. We just have to take the 35%. Of course, sometimes it works wonders. There are plenty of battles where the back fleet has taken more than 35% of their HP damage before Juno dies. Juno's obviously in the front with the Manju, so she's going to die pretty early in the battle and then have the Manju invincibility proc. It ends up working out better than you would think. It just feels really weird to me. It's really a product of what we're running in the front. Not running evasion on Anchorage or Seattle is such a loss that it's worth risking the fact that we're not hedged against an early Juno death or a late Juno death. Overall, the Manju helps us prepare for where she actually needs to die, but not everything is perfect. That being said, Juno ends up usually doing all right. As for the non-auxiliary equipment, it's pretty standard what I've been using on Juno for a while, and probably what you want to use on Juno for the most part. So yeah, that's my fleet of 6 here. This fleet, we're going to go test it for getting Admiral of the Navy. I hope you guys enjoy this fleet. It's been a lot of fun practicing with this fleet. I'm pretty confident it's going to do well. All right, so we're starting off with a Mafia fleet competition here. Obviously, the best top meta fleet here. It even has an Anchorage complete. So this will be a good first litmus test for how good this fleet is. And so far, that Vanguard is holding up against all odds here against the Dukas, and we even killed that Anchorage pretty quickly, so that's pretty nice. And at this point, we're actually in the back line, and there the Pearl Tears goes for Juno, but really we have the other 5, and this is a wrap. We actually did really well there. And so in this next battle, we also have a New Jersey and an Acula, but they go for Warspite for sniping, which can be a problem here, is see if we lose New Jersey early. But they went for a bunch of torpedo memes in the front, which, you know, have the potential of rolling really lucky and critting, but they didn't do so hot there, and that left us easy to kill them later on. So this ended up being pretty much, I mean, it's kind of hard to kill that last Acula for some reason. She was doing really well, but it ended up being pretty easy. This fleet right here that we're fighting against now is with Kaga, Akagi, and FDG, with a lot of damage early on in the battle. So we'll see if this fleet can sustain. It's definitely a very turtley fleet that we have, that we use, and we can see that here where it's like they have all this preloaded stuff. Like you saw all those planes come, and look how much damage there is. Like Bunker Hill is barely hurt. The front line is like untouched. Massachusetts is full health. Only Juno is a little bit damaged, but man, that was a 6-0 sweep. Now here on this fleet, we're fighting against full USS. This is a different full USS fleet. They're running more of a carrier build, so the Enterprise Essex, and then they're going to run Baltimore in the front. So this is going to kind of see which, you know, USS faction is a little bit better, and we end up winning that Vanguard fight because San Diego and Baltimore just cannot hold up. They're not as tanky as Seattle and Anchorage, and now at this point we're just sitting on the carriers with a lot of backline there. And there's the Juno, and our backline is very healthy. We have 2 in their you know, opposing backline, so it's just a matter of time, you know. So that ended up being pretty good. Here, this is just like a fun one of all oathed, all very old ships. We have Illustrious, Hood, Enterprise, Ainami, Belfast, Prince Eugen. That's just a lot of fun old ships, and we could kind of see how we've kind of progressed in terms of the power creep since, you know, we were way back at the beginning. I just thought it was kind of a fun fleet to showcase. It also showcased shields, but I mean, Prince Eugen's shield's not very good, so it's not the best showcase of shields, but it showcases a shielding enemy, and as well, and we really took care of those shields pretty quickly with our shots from the Vanguard. And this fleet actually survived a lot longer than I thought it would. And then, of course, the Enterprise procs Lucky E right there, extending the battle. It is over. We do have Seattle in the background, but Anchorage died, which was kind of surprising. Next up, we have Naganamino. I haven't said that in so long. This used to be a tier 1 fleet back in the day, not too long ago. Well, long enough that I've forgotten how to say the combination of the word, but yeah, this has not been too much of a trouble. We have pretty thoroughly went through Amagi there. She died first, and then Shinano's apparently doing well at survivability. She got our Juno off. Bunker Hill is dying early. Bunker Hill, of course, is the least tanky in this fleet. Next up, we have another one of these New Jersey Aculas, but with FGG instead. What is with these people not having Veneto? It's fine. FGG is pretty decent. It's very tanky, so that's fine. They're also running Prince Heinrich, Helena, and Juno in the front. The Heinrich's an interesting choice, but maybe just a preference. But I do think that the Juno Helena is good. I think Helena probably has a Manju item on her. That's probably, yeah, there it is. It procs. And yeah, this is actually, once again, this almost like a burger fleet. And the burger fleet's not too bad. The Helena had the Pearl Tears, which is a little bit sad given they had the Manju item too. But because it delayed a heal on some of the things that died. But we lost basically New Jersey, so right now it's just Massachusetts and Anchorage. This is actually a really close battle, just kind of showcasing once again that Massachusetts is bulkier than New Jersey in some instances. It would have been nice if Massachusetts fired that third shot at New Jersey, but luckily Anchorage is also bulky enough to just take this one for the win. But that was very, very close. Next up, once again, we have basically the same fleet, but with Drake instead of Prince Heinrich. And so we'll see if that makes it any better. This is a frustrating fleet. They also put FGG on the side. I don't like that as much because New Jersey doesn't really need to be in the middle. But it's fine. This is another sort of, I guess it's not really burger anymore because they have Drake. They have basically Helena procced the Manju item, but we took care of the Vanguard almost faster than last time. But that backline is doing pretty well. They're pretty healthy over there because our backline was targeting their front line. Which is why they died earlier in the front line. But once again, we lose New Jersey before anybody, but Massachusetts survives to the end. So really Massachusetts is being the real tank here. Next up, we have Hiru and Shinano with Nagato. And then they have a pretty old standard Vanguard. I guess, Suzutsuki in there is not necessarily as old standard, but this is Hiru and Shinano used to be a almost tier 0 before the Mafia fleet came out, and so it's good to compete against this because that's a lot of air power. And you can see, Shinano and Hiru both launched airstrikes, and we took like no damage. The Vanguard didn't even get half damaged. Bunker Hill is taking the most damage, but it's not even that much. And at this point, it's over. We won the Vanguard fight. It's just carriers in the back line. We just have to wait for the final counter to run out its timer, but this is all but one at this point. And we even procced anti-air mode from Juno for the disrespect, but that was a pretty clean swap here. Now we have Mafia again, so this is the new meta. This is the fleet that actually took out that previous meta fleet. That was the meta fleet before this came out with, Acula and Veneto. And so we'll see. We've already played one Mafia fleet earlier. That one had Anchorage. This one has Seattle instead, but both are pretty lethal. And so we have our Juno proccing there on the Manju item. We're losing most of the Vanguard, so that's a little bit unfortunate on the timing there. The Pearl Tears comes just in time with the thing to give Anchorage some health there, but we're still probably going to lose this Vanguard fight. But we do take out their New Jersey, so that was kind of nice on some of the targeting. They're running the rocket bombers as well on their Acula, which I like doing. And New Jersey, fortunately, has not really been targeted too much. They were targeting Massachusetts, who's dead, but this should end up being a win, but I don't know. Veneto is like holding on and fire. They both fire at the same time, but luckily New Jersey can tank a hit and kills Veneto. All right, back with another Hiru Shinano fleet here. In this one, they're running more, basically a very similar Vanguard. So we're going to get to compete against another showcase of this IJN older meta. This is still very good. You can actually switch the Nagato out for New Jersey, and that's considered a weeb fleet, and that's also one of the top fleets that can be used. I'm not sure if we'll have to showcase one of those, but this wow, so Yukikaze just speeding around. She's still very viable if she's fast and can dodge, or if she just gets her evasion to proc, or her lucky skill, her unsinkable ship. They are taking a lot more damage here, so they did a little bit better in terms of the airstrike capabilities, not so much dodging by my backline. But Massachusetts, once again, showcasing that she lives longer than New Jersey more often. Like, there's a lot of showcases of battles here where Massachusetts is just living longer. And that's it. We ended up making it to Admiral of the Navy. We got top 10. Finished in 6th, so not as great as I would have liked. I would have liked to obviously get top 3 or number 1 if possible, but you know, 6 is pretty good with this off-meta fleet. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and subscribe to the channel if you want more content like this, and maybe you'll catch me doing some PvP battles on stream or something. But thank you guys for coming out. Take care, and until next time.